Welcome to another episode of TRVC. Today I have as guest Haluk Nişli, General Manager at Inveo Ventures. I've heard a lot about Inveo. I'm very excited to have him on the podcast today. Welcome, Haluk.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here.
Just wanted to start out by getting to know you a little bit. What was your career path? How did you get into venture in Turkey?
I'm an engineer, industrial engineer, but all my career for 11 years, it was all about entrepreneurship, both sides of the table. I started with StartersHub, which was one of the top early stage accelerators and also early stage investment funds in Turkey.
The first, pretty much.
Pretty the first, I guess.
The original great, kind of the OG
definitely.
Accelerator in Turkey.
And the ecosystem there, the vibe was very, very good. Location of the company itself was very good, just next to Canyon. It was a very good experience there.
Çiğdem Toraman was a manager there. She's now gone on to...
now living in US.
Founded
we're saying hello to her.
Trio VC.
Yeah, and it was owned by Gedik, Yatırım, and also Meve Holding. And also we had other partners there. The founding partner was Ersin Pamuksüzer. So it was a really good board structure there, really good mentors. And also my career started there. I had a little consultancy experience back then, but the real path started with StartersHub. So I worked there 4.5 years. We invested in the period that I was there, 62 companies, all early stage. We were hosting Startup Bootcamp Istanbul, and then we opened Startup Bootcamp San Francisco. Çiğdem was one of the persons that went there physically. And the investment thesis was to find the Turkish startups, all the talent from the local, and making it happen in the global stage. After that, I went to one portfolio startups of StartersHub called Tread in Motion. We were building smart gloves specifically for the usage of industries like automotive, retail, and logistics. And the blue-collar workers were wearing the smart glove to do more efficient work and also the more traced business. We got the VC and CVC investments in Tread in Motion. Even though there was a pandemic era, it was a real good success there. We started globalizing the company, started to make revenue outside of Turkey too. But then I left. The company is really going well right now. But I thought that it's the good part of me is in the venture side again. And I got an offer from Gedik, which was one of the major stakeholders of StartersHub, which I know from there. And they were forming a new venture called Inveo Ventures. And then I became the GP of that fund itself. And for the last 3 years, it's the story of Inveo Ventures right now. Maybe I started with saying I'm an industrial engineer. It also gives me the perspective of doing all the things together and optimizing the value like we had done it in the lectures, the objective function.
It's really interesting actually, because I see a lot of people in the ecosystem who have an industrial engineering background. A lot of people in the gaming industry, which is a big sector in Turkey. A lot of the players in the gaming industry came from an industrial engineering background. Several people in venture, I'm hearing industrial engineering background. I think that's really interesting because, one, industrial engineering is quite popular in Turkey, more so than in other countries, but it's quite a popular major. And so because of the university entrance system in Turkey, if it's popular, it means it attracts the best students. And then also it's a good background because, as you say, it's about optimization, it's about following the numbers, and these are all super important for startups and venture being data-driven. In fact, in Silicon Valley or Europe, it's popular to be data-driven, but they haven't always been that data-driven. And having a lot of people with a data-driven background in the Turkish ecosystem, I think, is a plus for.
I guess the secret sauce there is both being in the middle of the engineering and also the commercial side.
Right.
You both see that. Although the other engineers maybe do not look at us like real engineers, but or hardcore engineers, but we are just in the middle, and we like to do business with the people, just injecting also the relationship management, and also driven by the data, driven by the numbers itself.
So it's great to have the experience both at a incubator, then at a startup, and then back to kind of the venture side of things. So Inveo, Gedik, who had this background with Gedik is a big holding company, actually.
Inveo Holding is in the top. It's the top holdco and owning some subsidiaries below itself. Gedik is the most known of them. But Inveo owns Gedik, and Gedik's know-how comes from the private brokerage. It's one of the top private brokerage firms in Turkey, and the capital and the know-how comes from there since 1991. But since 2014, it also invests to technology startups, and we have investment bank next to Gedik as a sister company. We have one portfolio management company, Inveo Portfolio, and we have Inveo Ventures.
And the origins of the holding is in steel?
No, we're from the finance part. They are separate.
Right.
They're separate.
But there's also an industry side to Gedik?
The holding part is different than the investment part.
Okay.
So we're talking about the brokerage.
So all the finance stuff, companies are separate. The banking, the brokerage, they're all in their own. Okay. And so Inveo Ventures, is it a wholly funded by Inveo Holding, or what is your kind of LP base?
Right now, yes, we're a corporate venture capital, only funded by Gedik and Inveo, the same family. We are also open to exterior funding right now. So I define ourselves as a CVC because we also do all the PRs, like we are one of the most active CVCs in Turkey, but we are somehow putting C just a bit distant than the VC part because we position ourselves as a both VC and a corporate venture capital. We have more maneuver capability in terms of investing and doing business with startups, not like a solid CVC just located in the heart of a big holding, but we are not as free or as, let's say, vibrant as a VC itself in terms of investment. Mainly we invest into Turkish startups and founders, but we're just in between. But right now we have only one LP, it's the company itself.
Okay, what else can you share about the fund? I mean, the sort of size, strategy, stage, etc.
Yeah, right now we are a sector-agnostic fund. We believe in all technology companies that have an upside, especially in the global stage.
High growth.
High growth, of course. We mainly invest to Fintech, Cybersecurity, B2B SaaS, enterprise software. We have some sectors, I don't want to say that we don't invest in them, but we don't feel as comfortable as the other ones, or we are definitely looking for co-investors, co-lead investors. CapEx-driven investments, one of them, and also gaming or crypto or biotech investments can be considered in that area. We invest up to $1 million per startup, $1 million, and average ticket size was around 500K last year. We have 22 companies in our portfolio, all technology-driven companies. We do not invest to any company that doesn't have technology in their core. Definition of that technology startup is very important for ourselves. We have 4 people working in our core team, and we also get the support, of course, from Gedik and Inveo in terms of corporate finance, HR, and all the other stuff to run the fund itself, and it also helps to do business with the startups too. We do not have a clear, strict mandate of you have to do business with Gedik or Inveo before getting investment from ourselves. It's just good to have for ourselves, and maybe it's one of the biggest differentiating point than the other CVCs. Mainly we invest to Turkish startups or startups with Turkish founders. Every fund is interested in Turkish diaspora. We are too, but we believe that our smart money investment also comes from the network that we have in the region. So our direct investments also restricted by the legislation itself too. As you know, we have a proportion there. We are mainly investing here and making it global together.
It's interesting, the point about investing in companies that have technology component, because there's a lot of different ways to define that, right? It's kind of a fuzzy line between, how do you define what is a technology company? Do you have a particular definition you like, or is it just kind of like...
Intellectual property is one of them, of course,
right, okay.
But we can also see some outliers out of our portfolio too. But owning an IP or a desire to own an IP and selling the IP itself, licensing the IP itself to outside of Turkey is a good point to define them. Not just having an app or a website makes a company technological enough. IP could be the first and the most important answer.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that industrial engineers kind of operate at the intersection between engineering and business. I like as one of the definitions of a technology company is kind of, if you add a third circle there, which is design or customer focus. And if you operate at the intersection of technology, business, and customer focus or design, that's kind of like the sweet spot for technology companies.
Using technology or taking advantage of the technology to get the upside or to scale the business itself is maybe the right answer, because there might be some maybe more operational companies, but using the technology in its core, not having a maybe deep tech IP, but also touching most people around the world, many people around the world. We are also interested in them. Actually, we don't consider ourselves as just a financial investor, but also we're interested in getting the upside of that investment too. So if we feel that these are the right founders, this is the right business in the right time, just align with the trends of technology, then we are interested in investing in that. So
what's the structure of the fund? Is it like an evergreen fund?
Evergreen, yeah.
So you don't have a kind of a time limit of...
Yeah, because it's corporate venture capital, just having one LP right now, it's evergreen because we are negotiating the budget and we are defining our OPEX and also investment schemes in the beginning of the year. But right now, the story that I have right now is we have some people around, some individual investors and corporate investors saying that, look, we want to invest with you. It can be just a co-investment, case by case, or it can be investment in the fund too. So we decided to take these interested investors in our fund. So Inveo Ventures is open to exterior investment right now. So we define a new schedule and a new, of course, they are going to ask about all the upsides, all the carry and all the, of course, management fee too. We just formed a new fund for that, and this fund will be an investment vehicle just going into Inveo Ventures itself. So the investors just coming here will be the partner of these 22 companies, and also we have funds, maybe I forgot to mention, we have also fund investments, FOF vehicle inside the balance sheet of Inveo Ventures itself. So the new investors will be all partners of that total picture.
Just to catch parts of what you just said. So Inveo Ventures also invests in other venture funds.
Why fund investments? We also define a strategy there. We invest in funds that do not directly compete with ourselves. Mm-hmm. We are not investing in another Turkish CVC, for example, but we invest in, maybe I can say, complementary investments. We invested to Revo Capital's third fund, which mainly invests in the later stage than ourselves. So the number one problem or the opportunity for our portfolio startups is getting the follow-on funding. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's not a liability for our other fund investments, but we also wanted to have an organic bond with the funds that can invest to our portfolio startups in the later stages, including our follow-on investments too. And also their global connections. The number two that startups are asking for ourselves is to getting connected with the global VCs, global CVCs, and also the business partners there. We also wanted to get Revo's touch there too. And I guess there will be 1 to 2 fund investments each year. Maybe it can be also from the other industries that we don't feel very comfortable in direct investments. So it will be completing Inveo Ventures investment strategy and saying that if you're a startup, a technology startup coming out of this region, then these are the guys that I want to touch, at least have an opinion of them.
You mentioned cybersecurity as one of the sectors you've invested in. And cybersecurity is a particular interest of mine. What's your view on cybersecurity? Do you think it's something that Turkey is uniquely positioned to play in? What are some of the examples of the cybersecurity companies you invested in, and why did you like them? Or?
Yeah, we have one in portfolio right now, but we have several term sheets or pre-term sheet negotiations right now. We believe it's an important industry, and it can be like gaming in the future because Turkish engineering muscle is very good. There's a solid working force here, and also we have some hard lessons from leaks and other stuff that went in the region. So in terms of technical capability and in terms of experience, the founders in that particular area are ready for what's to come. And the one other part is also it's not a product easy to sell maybe, and if it's B2B, you also experience all the last-longing B2B sales relationships in that area. But if you start selling, then it's like in your bedroom. You can't have a churn. You can't have a just get rid of that company because of pricing, for example. Mm-hmm. So in terms of financial metrics, it's very important for us too. And we also see other VC funds and CVC funds are interested in that region too. So it also enables us to co-invest with them. And maybe the last point is to do business. Although it's not a must-have for ourselves, we also can see the opportunity in doing business with our subsidiaries and the holding company too, because we are doing the business in a really regulated area. And both Gedik, Yatırım and Inveo Holding is open to public, to Borsa Istanbul. Mm-hmm. So any kind of additional value that we can put to them coming out of our portfolio is a very good catch. So these are the points that why I'm interested in that sector.
So you mentioned Borsa Istanbul. Another question I wanted to ask you, which is the exit landscape for Turkish startups. IPO is typically one of the paths. It's become less popular in the US. Borsa Istanbul, there's been obviously it goes in waves, but there's been quite a number of IPOs on Borsa Istanbul, although very few from the technology industry. How do you see IPO versus foreign strategic acquisition versus Turkish strategic acquisition or other exit paths?
Actually, IPO is one of my dreams too. Actually, the dream is to make the IPO with, for example, Gedik and one of our portfolio startups, and doing the maybe first Turkish technology-driven IPO. But it's not written in our contracts, not in mine and not also the SHA of our portfolio startups too. It's a choice. For this era, I think none of them is easy right now because the cost of capital is still high. But these are cycles, better than me, the previous cycles. So there will be a cycle to come, and the cost of capital will be diminished, and also there will be a huge interest to IPOs too. And if it's a dream of mine, then I definitely believe the other fund managers and the investors are thinking about that too. It can be a gaming company. It can be maybe a cybersecurity company like that. But if the IPO path is chosen, then we are a really good catch for the startup itself, because we have the main holding which is capable of doing it and which is very, very capable of that.
As a group of companies, you have a lot of experience with IPO. You have a brokerage, you have an investment bank, you have a portfolio management company. So you're actually quite well positioned to help startups, I guess, if that's the path they want to go down.
Definitely. Of course, startup founders should know that it's not an easy path, and it's not also short path, because maybe sometimes there are some objections from founders saying that you're taking these reporting standards and also the relationship management is too detailed in the SHAs, but it's all for making the company in the future to get the IPO or to get the strategic investment outside of Turkey. Because if we put the reporting standards, if we put the corporate governance rules in the startup as soon as possible, then it makes them a scale up, it makes them maybe a real company, even though it's not about the product or it's not about the core generating revenue in the first place. It will be helping these startups IPO path, for example, because we see it in the other companies. We see all the stuff that they are experiencing, and if you are experiencing it in the later stage, then it's very hard to convert your mindset to. So I think all the efforts that we are both taking with startups will pay us good in the future.
I think that's actually one of the most concrete value adds that a investor can provide, is demanding rigor on reporting. It's easy as an entrepreneur to focus on operating the business as opposed to analyzing it. But if you have an investor that's really not just demanding, but also helping you figuring out what metrics to look at and actually following up on them and helping you tweak, even if you take a particular metric, how you measure it, are you capturing it correctly, and that kind of pushing you, driving you on reporting can be super useful. How do you see, as a venture fund, your value add to the startups? Are there other areas also that you see that offer a value add?
As per reporting, of course, it shouldn't be just a report because the investor demands it. We generally talk with the startup founders saying that, look, these are the things that you should look when running the company itself. Because most of the successful founders have their management accounting Excel sheets. Sometimes they just share themselves, but just not interested in the cosmetics of the document itself, or not my standard reporting template, but their standard reporting template. But we believe that, okay, this founder is looking into that. This is the thing that he or she negotiates with the other co-founders, and they are in track of what they are doing and what they're spending. This also affects the running cost calculation and all the other company related stuff, and also the talent management inside of the company. So we as Inveo Ventures give really good insight in making these reporting standards, how to financially run the company and making a healthy company in the first place. I do not see ourselves as just investors asking for regular reporting and just sending it to the investment committee and saying that, look, we have done our business. We are not like that. And the other part is also doing business with the corporates, because even though you are aiming to sell to Gedik or Inveo, you start a mail thread, you start a meetings scheme and start selling as a B2B. And this is the part that you can take advantage of. Even though you don't sell to our company, you start negotiating with the C-level people or the directors and learn more about the pricing. So it's a good testing and practicing area for them, having the holding company, having the corporates within the fund. The other parts is we defined a perks package for our startups, because the value proposition that I'm saying here and all the other podcasts and the programs are, we are not a financial investor only. So what makes an investor a value-added investor is one of them is the perks that we defined. We give cloud credits, we give co-working space discounts, we give software development tools, and we also give GPU usage with the one good partners that we have in US. So we try to get accepted in the first place as Inveo Ventures of the all startup perks programs of that global companies, and then return to our startup saying that if you put the Inveo Ventures coupon or the code, you will be using this product for 6 months, for example, free or with a huge discount. So then the startups understand that we are not only the ones that getting reports from them, or we are not the ones that doors to be knocked when the runway is not good. They can use these products. And also we do some business partnership with the events outside of Turkey, making our portfolio startups a showcase for themselves, to present themselves there, to pitch themselves there. So these are the three important things that I believe Inveo Ventures differentiating points.
What are some of the typical things you've seen in terms of the biggest challenges of Turkish startups, or maybe even the flip side? What do you see are some of the strengths in the ecosystem?
Communication. Actually, I believe it got better in the last years, but communication between the founder and the VC investor, there's a huge room for development there, because the investors and the actual investment scheme or the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Turkey is very young. Even the investors are asking maybe for the liquidation in 3 years or 4 years after investing to a long-term investment fund. So people, both sides of the table, understood what the opponent is doing, mainly in this year or the year before. So that communication caused startups more time, caused themselves to wait more time before getting funded by an investor, selling to a corporate company, and also even hiring new talents to their company. Because as we talked before, if you are a guy that has to enter to a startup, your wife, your girlfriend, and your father is saying to you that you don't have to go to a startup, you have to work in a corporate company. So I think people get to understand more about the ecosystem itself. Also, they are aware of good stories, success stories, and everyone is investing more time to understanding themselves. We also define ourselves as a bridge between the investors and startups, bridge between our corporate holding and the business partnerships, because we set both sides of the table, and to making it more optimized, making all the funding levels, funding stage more optimized, we have to also get skin in the game.
That's a super important point. I mean, the power of stories is so important. You have success stories, and actually, it can even be failure stories, but just having stories is what gets people to know, because just the fact of there being, Turkey has an enormous number of accelerators, some number of CVCs, but just the fact that they exist, it's great, but it doesn't create the same kind of knowledge in the society as a few really good stories, right? That people tell each other or hear about. So, and there's, as you say, there's been some really good stories, big exits, and so those have created a lot of awareness. Another way to ask the question of the biggest challenge you see for Turkish startups is also like, what would be your advice to a typical Turkish entrepreneur from the investor point?
For an investment, we are in a time that global investors are less interested in investing to Turkish startups. It may be wrong in some cases, because if it's a successful story and it's a successful startup, then some investors think differently. But I guess when we were doing this business in StartersHub, it was different 10 or 11 years ago. But it will also flip too. It will also change. So I see a huge opportunity there for the investors here, of course, to invest to the right startups and wait for the, of course, global investments if it is needed. But one of the biggest challenges there is because we are saying to our portfolio startups that just get funded by, for example, a good VC in United States or UK, then he just comes back with flipping up the company to US and UK and can't get the real money to Turkey. But I think it's going to flip too. And to, of course, for getting over that challenge, they have to go outside of Turkey. They just form maybe an R&D center, OPEX structures in Turkey to also get funded in Turkey and also optimizing the cost itself. But they have to show something real outside of Turkey to that investors too. And I hope they don't forget to reinvest in Turkey when they exit outside of Turkey, because I think they should come back as serial investors or VC fund managers. I also hear some stories that they become LPs in the other funds too. Reinvesting both their money and their time back to Turkish founders is very important.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way I like to look at it is when you're in a time with maybe not as much foreign interest in investing in Turkish startups as maybe in the past or as we'd like for there to be. Despite that, the ecosystem is growing. So if you look at the glass half full way of looking at things, then, imagine now if we start to get more interest from foreign LPs and foreign funds and Turkish funds and Turkish startups, how much more the ecosystem can grow at that point. So it's never going to be easy, but I do think there's a good possibility for upside, for growth in the Turkish ecosystem, which is encouraging. Do you have a 5-year, 10-year view on this is what we hope to be doing in 5 years or in 10 years?
Actually, the vision itself is being the most effective corporate venture capital in the region. While defining it, we didn't say only in Turkey. So what we have to achieve, what we want to achieve is to be touched or to be asked by every other startup and the fund itself. It's like being a thought leader in the region, because we invest in funds, we invest in startups, we are interested in IPOs, we are mainly the finance guys, finance background, but we want to talk in the same way that the founders are talking, because we are young and we are dynamic. Of course, we want to make money out of the fund itself. That's why we negotiate with startups. We give importance to reporting of all great matters, and we believe that even the FDI comes here or we go there, we have portfolio startups to be sold in good prices, better than our costs. Beside that, we also want the other funds, all the startups in the region, to say that, look, these are the guys doing this business in the same region with the real good focus for 15 years. We have to partner with them. We have to co-invest with them. We have to maybe be investors of them. That's the path that we are looking at. I'm not going to say that we are expecting 10x, 20x out of funds, because we are doing that money in our real business too. Maybe better than the other funds, DPIs, TVPIs in the latest years. But it's not all about money, not forgetting about making that upside, but it's all about giving back to the ecosystem and making Turkey one of the most successful startup ecosystems in the world, because we have that muscle, engineering muscle, capability of workforce, and we have that location advantage. We have 3-hour flights to Europe and also to the GCC region, and US-backed VCs are asking for gaming companies in Turkey. They know about the value itself. So if we did it in gaming and if we did it before, we're definitely going to do it in a horizontal way too.
Just saw the announcement of your latest investments is in a company called Myth.ai, in AI for fashion industry.
Here.
Tell us a little bit about that investment. What was the kind of the thought process behind it, or anything you can share about it?
Actually, the founder, Özge, is very, very good and very talented in that background, because we also, in our investment thesis, like founder background fit. That fits in that company. And also that fits our fund of funds investment scheme too. It's a good example, because we invested in Revo, and Revo just allocated some of their main fund to early stage investments, and we co-invested and called it the round with Revo. And the technology itself is very good. They are doing business, and they also partnered with the producers too, the production facilities, and the interest of the founder and the background of founder and the technology itself is a really good chance of upside in that particular company. So we believe in AI. There's no need to talk about AI, I guess. And this is a niche AI business, but we see a huge demand, and especially in the east side of the world, eastern than us, I think there will be a good upside there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about founder product fit. Turkey has had a large textile industry. It's a difficult industry to be in, and so it's had ups and downs. But using Turkey's textile industry background means you have people who know about the industry, you have local know-how. So the idea that you would have an AI company focused on textile makes total sense for Turkey. It's something that if you have the engineering capabilities and industry know-how, put those two together. And so I think it's a great play for a company to come out of Turkey. A couple short questions. Do you have any other stories of really interesting first founder meeting, either positive or negative?
Actually, I don't have. I don't want to separate each story because all of them are unique for ourselves. But I sometimes feel that we have to be fast. The startup founders have to be fast. Other co-investors could do this investment in a more faster way. Then maybe we could see the upsides in more early stages, because completing the investment in Turkey, finalizing all the closing schedule is taking some time in Turkey. I have some companies, I call them anti-portfolio companies. If we were fast enough, we should invest there. But all the regulation stuff, all the corporate governance structure that we have sometimes makes us not write that check easily as a US-backed investor.
Okay.
So maybe for the negative side, I can say that.
Overall, do you think the Turkish VC ecosystem is a little bit slow on the investment cycle from meeting a founder to through to signing a term sheet? And
yes, it takes time. Of course, there aren't any points that I should say we could go over that, but all the focus should be closing that the investment. But I'm not also blaming the VCs or CVCs. I see some shortages coming from startup founders too. Mm-hmm. If it's around maybe co-led by some investors altogether, and if there are angel investors also in the company itself, it's taking so much time. But it doesn't mean that why don't you write a safe check and just wire the money the day after you meet. Of course, we can't be as fast as maybe Silicon Valley investors, but there are some good room for developments there. We have to be faster. Mm-hmm. Both sides of the table.
Any kind of a resource, either a blog or a book you would recommend?
Actually, that part will not come from the ecosystem itself. I mainly answer these questions as the Little Prince. It's the favorite book that I have. It's like a book I look into if I have some hard times in my life, because it gives so much about the relationships and the hope itself. I am also a fan of Lion King, both the movie and the book, and it also demonstrates the importance of family. To myself. So I find that points outside of my business, outside of my regular working life, just to take myself out of that standard procedures and just look at the other parts of the world. For example, yesterday I listened to Steve Jobs' closing speech in the ceremony of Stanford University in 2005, I guess. Maybe some listeners should say that we have listened to that maybe 50 times.
Yeah, it's a classic. You can
send to my colleagues.
You can always listen to it again.
Every time I listen, I find something to be followed or to be digested more. And the last point was connecting the dots when looking back to your future. He was saying that it's hard to maybe connect the dots, what's happening to you from looking today to the future. But when you look at your history, then it's easy to connect.
It's really interesting because, they always say VC is a relationship business. It's all about having access to entrepreneurs, establishing and maintaining relationships over time with serial entrepreneurs and people in the ecosystem. So I think it's really interesting you pointed out both the Little Prince, and specifically because it teaches a lot about relationships. Is there something that you see in the ecosystem or generally something that you believe in that you notice other people don't seem to have noticed yet?
They have to be patient. Patience, I should say, both for the investors and for startups, because we have really good stories to tell, really good stories to demonstrate, but all parts of the table should be patient, I guess.
It's a good general theme to end on. I mean, it is a long-term business, certainly for an evergreen fund, but even a standard VC fund a standard term is usually like 10 years. So it's definitely, as they say, it's longer than the average marriage. So
they also say that you have to invest in VCs with the money that you forget when you just drop on the road.
Right.
So it's
you have to be willing to write off.
Willing to lose the money, willing to write off, yes.
Yeah. Great. It was a really fun conversation. Great to get to know you a bit better and get to know about Inveo Ventures. Look forward to hearing more success stories from Inveo and from the sector.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you for having me again.